We've got 5 top management strategies to share with you today. Because here at Scoot, we believe that classroom management is extremely important to effective teaching. Really, it's the heart of it. If you don't have a well-managed and run classroom, it's really hard for students to learn, and it's really hard for you to teach. So, here are 5 of our top strategies. Number 1, setting up your classroom and being prepared. Number 2, positive reinforcement. Number 3, redirection. Number 4, de-escalation. And number 5, knowing when to call for help. Our first step is setting up your classroom and being prepared for the day. Start by making sure you're arriving on time and you get the lesson plans you need, you know where your classroom is, you introduce yourself to the office staff, say hello, tell them that you're here to sub from Scoot. Once you get into your classroom, you can put your name on the board, you can find out where are the attendance sheets, all that good stuff, so that you're prepared once students enter. No one does well when they're flustered and trying to find something that they need as students are coming in and trying to get settled. So make sure you give yourself enough time to be prepared. The next is ask questions. So when you arrive, make sure to ask the office where you can find your lesson plans, if there are any rules or expectations you should be aware of that are particular to that school. You might find those in the lesson plans themselves, but it's always nice to ask. You might also want to ask them about the class that you're covering. Are there any students with special needs or any accommodations you should be aware of? Next, take action. When students start arriving, greet them, say hello, ask them what their name is, how is their morning going so far? Once they get seated and you're ready to go, it's time to set clear expectations. It's also a great chance to introduce yourself. You're a person too. You can tell them a little bit about your background. It's also a great way to build relationships with your kids. One of my favorite things to do when I start class is to introduce myself with my name, but also where I'm from, some of the kind of music I like to listen to, and maybe a TV show or movie that I've seen recently that I like. You never know, you might have a student in class that's also seen that movie, and that's a great connection you've already made day 1. You might be wondering, Eliana, what does setting clear expectations actually mean? Well, it's more than just going over what's in the lesson today, what are the activities they'll be doing. It's letting them know what are the boundaries, what are some of the rules of the class to make sure everyone's safe and having a fun day. Some of my expectations would be when we're trying to talk with each other, when I'm teaching or giving some instructions, please raise your hand. Let me know you have a question or you have something to say. That way I can actually hear you and respond versus everyone talking over each other. You might also have expectations like respecting each other's personal space or boundaries. There might be classroom or school expectations that you want to just reiterate, letting them know even though you're just subbing for the day, those rules still apply, like a bathroom pass rule, or when you're getting out of your seat to go throw something away or talk to a friend. You know, what are the expectations there? Anything that has to do with sort of how we all should interact with each other and how we should treat each other. That could be part of your expectations. Our next step is positive narration or positive reinforcement. It's a management technique where you're changing the focus to what students are doing right. What are the positive things you're noticing in student behaviors and how they're interacting with each other instead of always harping on what's going wrong. Nobody likes to be called out on what's wrong or what they should be doing differently. Instead, highlight, hey, Susie's doing a great job filling in that worksheet. Great job, Susie. Now the other kids around Susie go, oh, I want to do what Susie's doing and get a shout out from my teacher too. So that's sort of the basis of positive reinforcement and redirection. Something else to keep in mind with positive redirection and reinforcement is most students that do get what we would say a negative interaction with the teacher may need as many as 7 positive interactions to turn their feelings around and be back on the side with you, because otherwise they may start feeling down on themselves and wondering, why does this teacher keep pointing out what I'm doing wrong? You will have students that may only need 1 more piece of positive praise to turn it around and get back on track. But again, some students may need as many as 7. So keep that in mind when you are redirecting and giving positive praise to your student. Another tip for positive reinforcement is make it specific. Really note what exactly they're doing and what is their behavior. For example, instead of saying, "Great job, Johnny," you might say, "I really like how you're filling in each box the way that we talked about together in class." Or, "Gerald, I love how you are helping your friend with that problem. Thanks." It's a little bit more specific. People around can also hear. It's just overall, helps you build some trust and some positive relationships with your students too. Another strategy to be able to give positive reinforcement and see what students are doing is to be up and actively monitoring. So what does that mean? It means get up, walk around, see what your students are doing, check in with each table group, squat down, get on their level, say, how is it going? Take a look at what they're doing, give any suggestions or offer help, but also check in one-on-one. It's fine to just mosey around the room, be up and active so that you're not the teacher just sitting at your desk in the front of the room with your feet up on the table, because that's not what a Scoot Sub is about. Another positive strategy is empowering your students. What I mean by that is give them some leadership opportunities, some responsibilities. You'll find that students who struggle to sit still or to stay focused do really well with a responsibility for the class. For example, I had a student that could not sit in his seat for more than 30 seconds. He had to get up and throw something away or ask for a pencil from his friend. There was always something, and I thought, how can I get this student to feel empowered, but also get work done and be able to learn with me? So I told him at every class, whenever we had any papers to pass out, that it was his job, his responsibility to be the person to pass out papers to all his friends. And he loved that. It was a great opportunity for him to get up out of his seat, but also do something that was important, make sure everyone had the assignments and worksheets that they needed. It also gave him a little opportunity to say hello to his friends and have that social interaction. But it also meant that he and I had now a better relationship, because he was like, wow, my teacher is trusting me to give me this responsibility to do. And it may sound small, but it really did make a huge difference. The next step is redirection. Even the most experienced educators, the most seasoned veterans will have to use redirection at times. It's just part of teaching. It's more of a reactive strategy, so when there's already maybe some disruptions or challenging behaviors, but you want to try to get them back on track. And we have some great strategies to do that. The first strategy is attention getters. So when you are about to give instructions to your class or start talking about the assignment, delivering content, you want to make sure that all of your students are able to hear you and paying attention, engaging with you. So you may need to rein them in if there are some side conversations, or maybe they've just come in from recess. There are some great examples of attention getters all over the internet. You can search for all kinds of really creative things. Some of my favorites are call and response. And you can find tons of different call and response. It could be, some lyrics from your favorite song. It could be 1, 2, 3, and then students say, all eyes on me. Something like that to get them to respond to you, and now you have their attention, they're hooked, and you can move on with your lesson. Other examples might be turning the lights off and on. It could also be counting down. So I would, sometimes with my older students, I taught high school, saying 1, 2, 3, eyes on me. It's maybe more so for little kids, but even with older kids, I needed to get their attention before giving instructions. So I might just count down from 3 to 1, and my students knew that when I got to 1, it was time to be quiet, and so that they could hear what my instructions were next. We have a consultant here at Scoot that was a former elementary school teacher, and one of his favorite attention getters is he might give everyone a break to act like a certain animal, and they'd make little animal noises and act like the animal across the room, and then he'd have a word at the end like stop or all together, and then everyone would stop where they are and freeze and turn their eyes onto him. So then he could give the next directions. Another strategy To redirect a student's behavior is to just restate the expectations you have. Now, this is really only effective if you've set clear expectations at the start of class. So that's why that first step of being prepared and setting expectations is really key, because then you can refer back to them and say, hey, remember we already talked about how we need to stay in our seats during this assignment and work independently. I saw you're talking with your neighbor. Why don't we try and do this independently on our own, and you'll have some time to work with your neighbor later. You can do this at the start of class, in the middle of class, at the end of class. There's no specific time you can or can't use it. Redirection can be public or private, and both can be effective depending on the situation. If the whole class needs redirection, you can do so in front, out loud, to get everyone's attention and reset the expectation. It might be more effective to do one-on-one if only one or a few students aren't following the expectations you need. Either way, think about what the impact might have on the student and how they may feel afterwards, because that can be a great opportunity for you to make sure that they still have trust in you, they still have positive feelings with you, whereas a public redirection for just one person, that can be a little dicey. Finally, one of my favorite strategies for redirection is something most teachers may not, they might not say is a really difficult redirection strategy. It's really simple, but it might not be something you always think of. It's just proximity. Get close to where the student is that you're trying to remind or give a redirection that what they're doing maybe isn't what you just asked them to do. So it can be as simple as you're giving instructions, you notice one or two students in the back of the room chit-chatting, and you're thinking, I just asked everyone to listen quietly to this, so as I'm talking, giving directions, I might just start walking towards the back of the room and standing near their desk. You don't want to hover, you don't want to invade anyone's personal space, nobody likes that, and you don't want to escalate the situation by doing that either. You're just going to move a little bit closer, give that proximity between you and the student or students, and that can oftentimes sort of remind them, oh, whoops, I need to get back on task, or I need to re-engage, instead of having to say something verbally or do anything more drastic than that. The next strategy is definitely a reactive strategy, which is de-escalating a situation. Sometimes emotions run high in a classroom. That's just part of working with kids, working with people. But it's important that we don't fuel the fire and instead try to calm ourselves and everyone else down. As the teacher, the adult in the room, we are the ones setting the tone. So we have some strategies for you to use when you are trying to de-escalate a situation in class. Strategy 1, don't take things personally. 99.9% of the time, it is not about you. Everyone carries their own invisible backpack with lots of things going on in their lives, at home, in their heads, in their hearts, and what's going on in front of you in class probably isn't about you or class at all. So don't take it personally. Second strategy, stay calm. If you need to take a breath, if you need to step back, if you need to tell the student, you know what, I think we're both feeling a lot of feelings right now. Why don't we talk about this a little bit later today when we're calm and we can talk to each other respectfully. You are the adult in the room. And again, students are gonna follow your lead. So if you start getting really hyped up and angry and upset, they are gonna start matching that emotion, and that's not gonna lead to anywhere good. Finally, avoid power struggles. It is never about winning or losing or who has more authority over someone else. You're not going to win anything. No one is. There's no winner in that situation. So emphasize that students always have a choice, as they do. Everyone does. Everyone is responsible for their own actions. So let them know that. Hey, I noticed that you're starting to move in this direction. How about I step back and you can choose whether or not you want to do A or B. Maybe it's, continue with this assignment and get back on task, or do you need to take a break and step outside? Maybe you want to go talk to a counselor or someone else. Give them a choice. Let them know that their behavior is their choice and you can't make them do anything, and it's not about that. It's about letting them know what the expectation is, giving them a chance to change it, and letting them know here are the different choices you could make, and eventually what the consequence of each one might be. The last strategy is calling for support. 9 times out of 10, implementing the first 4 strategies, trying to be proactive and be prepared, do positive narration and reinforcement, maybe redirect if needed, and de-escalate if it starts to get out of hand, all of those will 9 times out of 10 be the solution you need. However, if things really do escalate to a point where you need help, then part of your job as a teacher is to ask for help. You may not be able to handle everything that's thrown at you, and that's okay. That's what administration and other staff members at the school are there for. The first thing you need to know before you can call for help is who do you call and how. For some schools, that might be an office phone in your classroom that you can pick up and call. Some might have a walkie-talkie. Some might ask you to text the office. Every school is different. It might be your teacher neighbor next door that you can send a student to ask questions or ask for support. Whichever it is, part of being prepared, step 1, is to ask, if I do need help, who should I call and how can I reach them? Next, make sure you really have tried all of your strategies first before you do call for help. Administrators, principals, support staff, they would want to know when they arrive to that situation what you've already tried, what you've already done. And if you throw your hands up and say, not much, I just didn't want to deal with it, so I called you, not a great look, right? So make sure that you're able to say, well, I first tried to give some positive reinforcement and redirect. Then I tried to de-escalate by having a one-on-one conversation with the student and reminding them of the expectations. None of that worked, so I called you for help. That puts a great professional lens on yourself, on Scoot. It also tells the administrator, great, you've tried a lot of things, so now they can step in and go, one step further, potentially contacting family or having a more serious conversation with students. But all of that would be best done if they know what you've already tried. You might be wondering, well, what do I do if I can't call for help? Well, send a student. If you need something for an emergency situation in particular, it's fine to ask one of your students, or if they're younger, maybe 2 students in a pair, to go to the next door classroom or the front office and let them know that you need support ASAP. Especially, again, in emergency situations, if you're not able to get to a phone or another way to communicate yourself.